Oh, you won the behind the scenes tour. Cool. All right. So we need to figure this out. We're still good. We are open. The aquarium is open. If you are wanting or willing to travel, where are you, Jenny? She's just sending but separate. Sorry if I'm outed you. You sent it just to me, but she was the, I had donated a 4-pack of tickets at the National Virtual Natural Conference. And you have to figure out a way for getting her over here. All right, it looks like we might have all the folks that we're going to have. Again, my name is Rhana. I'm an educator at the North Carolina Aquarium on Roanoke Island. This is the exercise portion of the day's program. So put your left arm out, make a fist, and put it on your left hip. Put your right arm out. You are now the state of North Carolina. And so where you see that pit of the elbow that comes out, that's Hatteras. There's 4 facilities in our state aquarium system. I'm up here by the shoulder. There's one down here called Fort Fisher, and there's one down here called Pine Knoll Shores, and there's a pier out into the ocean at Nag's Head. So just to kind of give you an idea of where we are located. This is a session I'm titling Things I've Learned While Dealing with COVID. Tips for the Evidence-Based Learning Network. And so what I'd like to do is share with you some of the things I've learned. What I'd like to do is offer at the end, I think there's just about 20 of us, so there's not too many people that we can kind of discuss or ask questions at the very end. But if you do have questions, type them in the chat. I've got 2 gals, Kate and Jessica, who are going to kind of be fielding questions to me as they come up. But I am constantly learning. So the theme today is learn. So you'll be seeing that word come up a lot in this session that we have today. But at any time you need to kind of bug out, no worries. I know lives are kind of crazy right now, but I hope that you will join us in the discussion at the very end. So I'm going to share screen, so bear with me for a second. So, whoops, I need to go back. Let me cancel that for a second. So if you have typed in the chat how you're feeling as a weather report, go ahead and hit send. Ooh, hey, severe storms later on.
Rhonda, before you start, can I just do a quick overview of some things to remind people of?
Sure.
All right. Hey guys, my name's Kate. I'm over here at Sandy Creek in Athens. Maybe some of you will join me Thursday, but just a reminder for our session today that keep your microphones muted unless you have a question. If you want to put the question in the chat, and then later we can, you can maybe ask it out loud, or I can refer it to Rhana. If you have a video, try to keep it on. We like to see your faces while we're presenting, so we don't feel like we're just talking to a computer screen. So that's always helpful if you're able to do that. And also include your full name on your little picture. If you're not sure how to do that, you can kind of right click up in the corner of your space, and it can have a little place that says rename. So that helps us to keep track of attendance in case you need that a little bit later. And then also we're pitching for Workshop 2022. We are looking for somebody to host the location. So if anybody has any interest, you can reach out to any of us that are here on the board or doing the workshop this week, but Christine or Jolie or myself would be happy to help you kind of put that together if you're interested. There's maybe some talk of Myrtle Beach. So if anybody's interested even in just being a participant in helping to put things together, we'll even look for people who maybe live in other places. So with that being said, Rhana, I think we are good. So I'm going to let you take over, and I'll just keep an eye out on the chat for you.
Awesome. So we saw a lot of good feedback on this is not, the system does not give me quite what I was hoping, but that's okay. As long as Kate can do it. I love to see that the scroll of the cloudy with chance of whatever and foggy and all that kind of stuff. So that was perfect. Yes, this is again, one of these little strategies for allowing folks to kind of participate while they are, you're waiting for other folks to join, or while you're getting all the logistics run through. So yes, a lot of I've seen a lot of chance of storms and fog, although Kate is sunny and breezy. So that's a very nice one. Very good. All right, so here we are. Things I learned while dealing with COVID. And boy, howdy, has this been a learning experience for everybody. So just kind of want to touch base on some of the things that I have learned. Whoops, here we go. let me go to this next one here. Remember back in 2019 in November when we joined together at the national conference, the last in-person national conference that we had. I had a wonderful chance to sit in on a concurrent presentation by Bob Powell and Mark Stern entitled Better Outcomes in Environmental Education. They had done a 2-year lit review of the successful, what was listed in the literature of successful field trips. What were some of the characteristics of those successful field trips? Then they had a bunch of researchers observe 376 national park programs in 24 different national parks across the country. So they surveyed the school kids that took part in those programs afterwards and kind of gleaned what they learned, and they presented this at the national workshop. Wonderful presentation. They were joined in this research by Troy Fensley and Dwayne Moore, and published it in 2019. And so it was very kind of neat how they were able to talk about what they learned, and they put it into this nice, concise little package that they called EE21. So environmental education in the 21st century condensed to EE21. There were 12 outcomes of every of 12 outcomes that they felt that every program should include to aim toward, if you're still kind of working toward that. But these were the ones that really seemed to make the program pop for the participants. We're all kind of working toward not just fact-based, can those kids recite what they learned with me today, but are they moving toward behaviors that preserve that resource? Are they moving toward a connection? Are they having empathy? All those kind of warm, fuzzy feelings that we kind of want to have in our programs. They saw a potential for that and grouped them into 12 outcomes, they called them. And they gathered these 12 outcomes into 4 categories, which I thought was awesome as well. One was the power of the visiting group. And so the idea of, can you give them pre-trip? Can you give them post-trip? Was the teacher making the field trip part of the lesson, not just some add-on kind of thing? Sizes. So the power of the group was important. The power of the place. We all know the power of the place was important, but also is this notion of the interpreter. Can the interpreter help those participants see the power of that place, see the relevance of that place? And so making that connection between the students and the program. And so this notion, even at the power of the place, they found that there were really good programs that were done in the basement. They found programs that were not so hot, done on the top of mountaintops. And so the power of place, really kind of how that interpreter linked the place to those kids was really important. The power of the people at the facility. And so what strategies did the interpreters have to make that place pop for the kids? And so this notion of passion, having a clear interest in that resource, responsive to the questions the kids had. Was there connection? Did they show the connection between an inner city group that might be to a natural area or a rural group coming into the city? So how did they do that? Was it organized? Again, that power of the people of the facility. Were you organized enough and showing the progression of the lesson so that the kids could follow along and see some logical themes, some transitions and things like that, stuff that we always talk about in CIG. And last but not least, but the power of the message was, did the interpreter leave the students with a clear outline of how those students could make a difference? Something we call self-efficacy. Do you give the kids a power to be able to make change in their lives based on what they learned in this resource, in this program? So again, tied to theme and conclusion, as we all know, important parts of CIG. I don't want to kind of go blow by blow, but there was a couple of things that I took home with me from this workshop back in November, 2 Novembers ago, that I thought this is what I want to add to my programs. Number 1, educator and interpreter need to have passion and comfort with the topic. I could see that, but it extended it to say, okay, if you're hiring somebody, whether they're a seasonal or whether it's going to be a permanent person, they felt that it was more important that that person, that interviewee, had passion and comfort, they can learn more about it. But if that person didn't feel that they were going to make a change, that the kids or the parents or the teachers that were going to come see them at that site, if they didn't feel that that was going to make any difference, you didn't want to hire that person. I thought that was kind of revelatory for me. Again, it's not necessarily knowing everything, but just saying, you know, I know enough, and boy, howdy, we're going to have to learn about this, and kind of showing the kids that you could learn new things. He really said to avoid fact-based learning, this notion of, you know, just kind of, and we've talked about that in CIG training, and not just tell everything you know about that topic. Kind of pick out the nuggets that you thought were most important. Then if the questions come, you can tell them more information. But again, the fact-based wasn't as good as showing sort of a connection. Again, that connection between the students and that place. What are some issues that you're dealing with, you know, whether it's conservation or societal or whatever. What are some things? What do you think you should do about that? What do you think that you should tell, if you could talk to the president, what would you tell him to do about this situation? So ways to have the kids kind of be vested in that topic. They also, as they were doing that research, they did look at demographics. And so one of the things that they found was that humor worked well if the groups were predominantly white, but humor didn't work as well if the groups were predominantly Latinx. Kind of an interesting thing to kind of think about. So again, know your audience. And this notion about this confidence and clarity. Are you following sort of a logical progression? Are you showing them the logical progression of your program so that they can follow along and understand as well? Another thing I learned is this notion of pre-trip and post-trip lessons, extending that learning. And I did my master's degree on the idea of pre-trip and post-trip. And I know from the research that I did that, you know, that does work. It still works. That was, you know, 30 years ago, I did that research. It still works because this notion of, one, the kids are coming, and, you know, as we have learned, if they are comfortable with that place, they're taking care of that Maslow's needs, they know that there's going to be a bathroom at your facility that they can use, if they know that there's a place to put their lunches or things like that, that helps them be comfortable with listening to what you're trying to show them or what you're trying to tell them. Post-trip lessons too is very important, again, because this notion of, we don't want it just to be a one and done. This is a freebie. You don't have to think, you know, we want the kids to take this information and think about it. So if the teacher kind of works with the kids, if you can work with the teacher to make sure that they have a pre-trip, post-trip, that always helps. The issue with teachers and chaperones, put a yes in the chat if you have had issues with teachers and chaperones. The notion of, you know, they just kind of sit in the back and play on their, oh, Christine is like, bam, she's yes. You know, they are on the phone, they've checked out, that kind of stuff. Well, you know what? You may have written it in your paperwork, you know, that when your kids come, we expect you to stay with your group and that kind of stuff. That doesn't work. What you need to do is kind of pull them aside when they are getting off the bus, when they are in the area, kind of pull all the chaperones together and say, I'm relying on you to help me with this. Help me teach these kids. Because they found that, you know, by verbally one-on-one with these people, that really helped get the teachers and the chaperones engaged. The funny picture of this, I'm engaging the parents in this picture. I asked the dads, there's a big auditorium, outside auditorium, and I was trying to explain how heavy leatherback sea turtles were. And so I asked, okay, dads, I need 10 dads up here, to kind of give you an idea of how heavy this thing is. So that's what that picture is about. Also, this notion of making the location feel novel. I'm an outreach coordinator, and I never know where I'm going to show up. You know, I might be in a classroom. I might be in this, you know, very sterile auditorium. I might be in the library. I never know. And so this notion of making the location feel novel kind of rang true for me. So I may be taking these kids on a trip through the universe, you know, talking about stars and stuff like that. How do I get them to kind of get in that groove of that feel when we're sitting in the auditorium or we're sitting in a library or something like that? So figure out ways to make the location novel. If it's a place they've been to a billion times, think about ways that you can make it novel again. So if you're leading on a trail, have them visualize, what if you were a bug? What would your perspective be? What if you're flying over as a blue jay? What would your perspective be? So kind of figure out ways to make the program novel for wherever you are in that classroom. They also found this notion of, novelty, is that the idea that live animals don't always make the program. I kind of had to think to myself, I always, again, being outreach, I always think it's got to have a live animal, got to have a live animal. Well, not necessarily. If you have a live animal, it has to make logical sense for it to be in that program. So again, think about the logical progression. Are you bringing them along on this train of thought so that they can understand how that animal fits into the program and why you brought it? Identify the students as scientists. Just by the act of saying, we are going to be scientists, made a big difference in what they found in their research. So I'm thinking to myself, I have the kids in a third grade program dissecting flowers. And I just thought, viewers, flowers, that's science. Well, if I don't say it specifically, the kids are kind of like, okay, yeah, whatever. But if I say we're going to be scientists, we are going to look at this thing as a scientist does. It just something in their brain kind of clicks, and it changes their expectations and their interest in the topic. Using, again, that notion of transitions. I have an outreach program where I take the kids out in the field, fifth graders out in the field. And one of the steps that we do, we kind of move from ecosystem to ecosystem. And usually I just kind of think of this as a time for the kids just to kind of walk and be kids and be in their own thought. But there is some logic in the notion of, we're now going to go to this next ecosystem. So think in your own mind, is there something else that, is there something, you have a similar situation where you need to move from place to place, or even the transition from idea to idea, if you're all staying in one place in one room. Think of how that transition, again, we talk about this in CIG, what is the transition and how is that going to help us link all these things together? But yeah, it matters. That's kind of nice to know. Again, having that cohesive whole is the thing that was the idea that these guys came up with. Find ways to make your group smaller. Again, you might be given a humongous auditorium to talk to, or you might be given a classroom, kids in the one class. But think of ways you can even make that a little bit smaller. Yes, they found that smaller groups work better, but can you kind of artificially make the group smaller? Something that we're experimenting with here at the aquarium is this notion of think, pair, share. And I don't know if anybody has heard that. If you've heard this phrase, think, pair, share, put it in the chat. Kind of curious. Yes, okay, good. Yeah, so this notion that, if you can build into your program an opportunity for the kids to kind of sit for a second, I wonder how I feel about that. Turn to your left, turn to your right, talk to somebody about it. Again, this is a way to make the group smaller and make that a little bit more integral, a part of your program. And last but not least, ask the kids what they think the conclusion was. I sometimes do that just to see if I, made it clear enough to them, kind of more of a evaluation thing for me. But again, if you can tie it to the theme, if they can see connections, again, that transition stuff, that's not a bad idea. And no, we're not abusing this child by shoving a refractometer in her eye. We're trying to get kids involved. So that's what's going on there. But we all know what happened. Everything kind of went screeching to a stop. And so these folks that did this E21 realized, they still had grant funding. They still wanted to see, okay, we need to kind of keep doing this research. Let's switch it up a little bit. And so Powell and Stern, again, joined Friendly and now Merritt, saw an opportunity to test out this E21 logic model with virtual programs. And I signed up for it. So this is they were being sponsored by the Pisces Foundation and the National Science Foundation. They had grant funding for this. The colleges of Virginia Tech, Clemson, and UNC-W were part of this thing, and they got about 44 different facilities from 18 steps and about 70 interpreters plus signed up to be part of this, what we call the evidence-based learning network. Evidence-based. You all know, and I know, that this notion of evaluating our programs is really important, and this idea that we need to have proof. I can get done with a program and think, yeah, I hit that one out of the park, or I can get done with a program and think, I forgot this, I forgot that. But these guys were looking at, and gals were looking at ways to make codify it, to make it something that they could say, yes, these are the things that seem to work. So a bunch of us got together, and this notion that we've been doing this since since September. We got together with this one goal in mind, is to take one online lesson, something that was originally something that we would have done in person, face to face, and see if this stuff works. And so we took a program that we normally have as a tour of the aquarium. A lot of times it's self-guided, but just let's see if we can make this work for an online learning lesson. And so what we did was, in the fall, we each took a program, converted it to an online. When we were done, we surveyed the students. We got feedback, and Eileen Merritt was the one who kind of put it all together and kind of gave us some feedback. And then repeat it again and see if you can do it again. What was sort of interesting was that they found that the survey really worked best if you're talking about 5th graders and up. And so that was probably the most challenging thing for a lot of us in this group, was not only having a group realize that they were doing online lessons, are they the right age group, and can we get enough signed up in the span that we had. And so we met in September to go over the plan. We met again in October, November, and January. Eileen analyzed what we did. They had over almost 2,000 survey participants, so that was a nice, robust study. And then they kind of looked at what our participants found, of our participants, how they fit in with those 12 categories, those 12 outcomes that we were looking for. Debriefed me in March, and we met again in March, and I'm now going to tell you, drum roll please, on what are some of the things that I learned from my survey and what I'm doing and changing as we go along. Number 1, wabi-sabi. Let's say it all together, wabi-sabi. If you're not familiar with that term, learn it, because that is a Japanese term that refers to that nothing lasts, nothing is finished, nothing is perfect. And Wren talked about this in her recent article in Legacy, about just kind of go with the flow, meet the challenges with grace, have a plan Q is what I usually say, because it's like things, curveballs are going to come at you. So regroup for another day. If anything is advantage of virtual is that most of the time you can tell the teacher, your equipment messed up, my equipment messed up, the Wi-Fi went out, whatever, let's regroup another day. So wabi-sabi, something we got to do. Teachers are happy to help out. Remember that one line item that I mentioned before, is I asked the teacher to help? Ask them. So I got in the habit, whenever I was, getting ready to, start a program, and the teacher was on board, I was like, okay, I'm relying on you to read the chat, because one of the things I found was that if I'm doing a tour on my phone, I couldn't keep switching back and forth and being able to read the chat without, get my glasses on and all kind of business. And so I relied on the teachers. I told them point blank, I need you to do this. They also were able to allow in late stragglers. They were able to mute kids that kept, popping off their microphone and things like that. So it was really helpful to have them be my co-host. So it really was kind of fun. This was a group that was quite reluctant at first. Ms. D, she had a lot on her plate, not just COVID stuff, but school stuff, and everything was virtual and all kind of stuff. And she was, a little bit of backstory. We had most of our programs that we've been doing the last 9 months this school year were grant supported teachers that were having to shift their grant monies over to virtual. And so Miss D was one of them. She was supposed to bring a bunch of boatload of kids, a busload of kids to the aquarium, couldn't do it anymore. And so we had to shift to this. And she really was reluctant with this whole, technology thing and everything. And so kind of had to do a little bit of hand holding, and we convinced her that for the same price that she was going to get one field trip here, she got 10 virtual lessons. And we met like every week for like 10 weeks. And you can see the smile on her face. She was getting into it. And I love this little guy in the bottom right, Desmond. Every time he came on screen, that was his position. His face was right there to get as much as he could from the lesson. So really kind of neat that worked out that well. Icebreakers and transitions. Again, that thing came up again too. Not only like we learned with CIG, the idea of, okay, where are you from? And, how was your day? Was the bus ride rough? Kind of letting the kids or whoever you're doing a presentation for, kind of get them into the groove. Transitions and icebreakers were important too. One of the ones I learned again was this notion of waterfall or rainstorm. How are you feeling? Type it. Now send it, never all these, the chats will come pouring in. So I've got another one for you. We did the how you feel about today as a weather report. How about what's your favorite season? How about that? Is that easy enough? So what's your favorite season? Everybody type it, but don't hit send yet. I'm waiting for somebody to check in, or I'm waiting for, making sure everybody's audio is working and everybody know where the mic is. All right, everybody send, what's your favorite season? See, fall, spring, fall, winter, spring. Yeah, so again, you can kind of see in the chat, there's a lot of, the feedback there. So again, it's just a chance to let people kind of be part of the program. So this notion of, again, transitions, as I'm walking between the different galleries, what can I have the kids think about? And so the theme that I latched onto with the tour of the aquarium is we move from rivers to swamps to sound to ocean as our galleries progress here at the aquarium. And so I had the kids visualize, you are a water drop, one of the few water drops that is fresh. And you are going to be working your way down from the rivers to the swamps, to the sounds of the ocean. What are you bumping up against? Are you bumping up against an animal? Are you bumping up against pollution? Are you bumping up against, what are you bumping up against as you're working your way down? And so as we were progressing and say, okay, where's your water drop now? What are you seeing? What are you feeling? What are you experiencing? Something else we learned is this idea of engaging students. And again, if you're like me, you are kind of used to being able to read the crowd, read the group, and kind of tell if we need to pick it up a notch, or there's a lot of questioning looks. Maybe I need to wait and ask if there's questions, that kind of thing. That's always kind of a challenge here now. I can't see anybody. So I'm just kind of relying on Kate to say, hey, we got a question. But what are some question ways, strategies you can kind of come up with? And so the ones I've listed here are 3 different ones, a question series that other folks had used that I thought were kind of neat. The one I kind of latched on was, what do you know? What did you learn in my program? And what are you going to look up when you get off the phone with me? Whatever you get off the computer with me? Somebody else had made it very, very succinct. What? So what now? What? What are we going to do with this information that we now have? But just an idea that that get the kids, again, that pre-trip, trip, post-trip idea. Pre-trip, what do you already know? In the trip, what did I just learn? And post-trip, what am I going to do with this? Can be a powerful thing to get the kids invested in the program, get the teacher invested in the program, and get them thinking. Again, that behavioral stuff. What am I going to do now? Did my water drop bump up against oil pollution? What are some things that I can do to change that? A couple other people had better, some success. I have to admit that I'm still learning. There's that word again. But using breakout rooms, Miro, Jamboard, a lot of different folks are bringing in different kind of strategies for allowing the kids to separate out, chat, and come back and do a little bit more thought and thinking about. Boy, howdy, have we not learned a lot of different kinds of apps. Again, we tended to use Zoom as much as we could, but I had groups that wanted to use Teams and Meets. Again, there's many different things, and we can talk about that at the end. What are people finding as successful? What are people finding as a challenge? And maybe some of us can help each other and meet those challenges. One thing, if you have a property, if you have a park or something like that, Ren, I'm thinking about you. One of the things that one group used was Google Earth. And so they were able to have the kids kind of come. They may not be able to walk with you physically, but they were able to have the kids get onto Google Earth and see that trail and kind of walk along that trail on Google Earth, which I thought was kind of a neat thing, but something to kind of think about, especially if you have any kind of property. Learning all kinds of stuff about equipment. I, again, had done virtual stuff before. I had my camera, I had my headphones things, but I learned about lighting, having lighting to kind of make sure that you're not sitting in the dark. I learned about mics. I learned about gimbals, all these kind of things that we're constantly learning about with virtual tours and things. And last but not least, learn to be specific in your asks. What were you asking them to do? And so does that tie into your theme? Does that tie into your the progression, the transitions that you set out for the kids? Ask them point blank. What are you going to do about it? What can you do? What can you do in your little part of the corner of the North Carolina or the world? What can you do to make some changes? And so, again, you can kind of get the kids engaged, get the kids thinking about what are some of the things that they do, what are some things that their family does, what can they do differently? Again, you'll be hearing more and more about this getting beyond do one thing, especially with this conservation issues and with climate change. So I have learned a lot. And I am continuing to learn. We're going to be meeting again in another couple of weeks, and I'm going to see how the second round that when adding my little water drop, did that resonate with children, with the 5th graders that I've been working with, and seeing what kind of happens. I'm going to add to, I'm going to see if I can do this. I'm going to add to the chat these 2 resources so that you can find them yourselves. Let's see, does that work? Yes. And then you can go to the research, go to their site and see what they're doing, how they're doing it, and learning more about this whole notion of EE21. I'm going to stop sharing. It looks like we got plenty of time to be able to see if we have any questions. Thank you, Patty Wren. I always like your comments. Any thoughts, any concerns? Take off your mics. Let's see if we can, we've got 24 people, which is a pretty good turnout. Yay, thank you for joining me. Are there any questions specifically about EE21, about the aquarium? I could sing songs if you'd like, up to you, but we have time. And this is a part where you really have to have some jokes in mind or something else to think about, because you never know if it's going to be dead air. Can you get a copy of that study? Yes, if you go to either those 2 websites, I believe both of them. Oh, the first one is National Park Service took the research and kind of talked about how the Park Service participated in this study. But the second one, the frec.virginiatechvt.edu, that's the website where they're kind of posting all the stuff, not only for the network folks that are participating, but anybody who else wants to get on it. But yes, they have the link to the actual paper. I believe they even did a paper in the not the legacy. What's our research-based
Journal of Interpretive Research.
Thank you, Phil. Yes, that too. Well, it was interesting, I thought, and I'll go ahead and kind of talk you through it. But the 21 outcomes that they thought was important to these kids, that the kids, when they responded on the survey, that they really resonated with. One of them was enjoyment. Where have we heard that, right? And our CIG stuff. Behavior change. Again, this notion of asking the kids, okay, what are you seeing? What do you, after you know this stuff, how is your behavior going to change? This notion of self-efficacy. What can you do? What attitudes can you take that will allow you to see change in your life, in your environment, in your society? Environmental attitudes. Again, we just in North Carolina have gotten the permission to talk about climate change, and we're just all abuzz about that. So what are some environmental attitudes we can get people to do? This notion, I think you probably have heard of this, 21st century skills, this idea of digital learners. We're all that now. Cooperation, cultural, critical thinking, problem solving. Those are things that kind of come up with this. Again, environmental behaviors versus environmental attitudes. A little bit different of different part of your brain that looks on that. Cooperation, there's that 21st century. Learning, they were not saying that we're going to get rid of facts. What are some nuggets of things that you can tell kids? But how can we promote learning? Interest and motivation. So the kids, was the topic interesting enough that they stayed on and listened and paid attention? And is that encourage them to have motivation? Connection to place. Again, where have we heard that? Again, even if you're in the basement, what are some ways that you can get kids to think about the place that you're talking about? Finding meaning in the talk that you talked about, and school behaviors. There's this notion of, because the kids were engaged, actively involved, were, allowed to kind of think, they found that the school behaviors issue was something that the teachers brought up and said, that kind of helped the kids, not act up during that field trip. So yes, I am looking forward to seeing Jenny too. Any other questions? Has anybody, does any of that, what I talked about, kind of made a little ping in the back of your head? Is anybody thinking about how can I now use something that I talked about today?
I really appreciate that it's research based, and it also kind of gets at one of my pet peeves about the way we do CIG training, in that what the takeaway doesn't always have to be something necessarily tangible, and that's always been a pet peeve of mine. And I really appreciate how this talks about, sort of the post lesson and sort of the long-term view of the activity that you do.
Yes. Yeah. And that's the thing, is that, I almost think we need to kind of redefine tangible, because tangible we think about as something you can, that's that cannon right there, kind of stuff. But, is there a way to say, something that kind of sticks in your brain? I mean, that's sort of tangible in my definition of tangible. So, yeah.
Just a quick question. I work
Sure.
primarily with family and adult programs, and I was just wondering if you're able to apply anything you learned from this research to potential, like virtual family programs, or like family programs distanced, socially distanced. Like, if so, what did you find?
Yeah. Again, the research was mostly focusing on 5th graders and up, just because they were more critical. So it wasn't just that they didn't think any of this stuff could work for everybody. I think a lot of it, again, knowing your audience, knowing how to get people engaged. If it's a little kids, do you bring in song? Do you bring in story? If they're adults, do you bring in song? Do you bring in story? That kind of thing. Anybody else have any kind of thoughts on that? But they did not say it was just for 5th grade and above. It was just that they were noticing that the 5th graders and above gave them better feedback. Anybody else?
Developmentally, because, traditionally we think it's about that time that they're able to think holistically and begin to put pieces together and make conclusions. So when you said 5th grade, it made sense to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But even if you're leading a nature hike, maybe you're only covering 100 yards with a bunch of preschoolers. You can still get them thinking about transition, see how, we're going downhill now. Golly, does that mean the water goes downhill too? Or do the acorns roll downhill too? I don't know. What do you think? And then you can kind of, we're going back uphill. Is it going to take me more energy to go uphill? That kind of business. And so even with the little kids, you can, I see Pat and Ren is nodding their head. Yes. Yes, and so even with the little kids, this notion, and I think that's the important thing. I think a lot of times with us, with the CIG training, is having our folks understand that knowing your audience, but also knowing that there's parts of the how you develop a program that works with just about everybody. Yes. Impact of transitions, yes, because that whole notion of helping people come along with you, I think is the way I usually, I'm going. I want you to come with me. Get on the train, and we're gonna stick together.
Something that struck me was the wabi-sabi. I mean, that was the whole thing with meeting challenges with grace, and yeah, the learning curve is steep, and really having to, it's so weird when I'm on Zoom, because primarily when I use Zoom, it's with my church. And so even last night when we were at the happy hour, I had this instinct to close with prayer. And I was like, wait, wrong audience. And so,
yeah.
Adapting with different groups and how different groups use the technology and the different expectations of different groups on the technology. It's just a great, almost just overall life of philosophy. So I appreciate you introducing me to that today.
You're very welcome. And thank you, Ren, for bringing that to our attention, because I've heard it off and on. And that was always that if you ever had a chance to listen or read the Free Range Thinking, Andy Goodman, he also brings up this notion of grace, that especially in this time, that I don't know, you have to really have a hard heart to not think we can get through this, give me a moment. But as interpreters, we're always trying to improve and that kind of thing. But I hope one day, I'm looking forward to the day when I can hit the button and everything is going to come into play, and I'm not having to kind of scramble behind the scenes. You see we're seeing my hands just going nuts over here on the keyboard trying to get the slides to go. But yes, Jamboard. When Jamboard doesn't get used like you planned, you got to take a breath. Yes, big time. Thank you, Lindsay, for that. Because one of the things that was, I always thought that was sort of interesting. Again, when this network gets together, they're very much interpreters. I think a lot of the NAI is definitely in Powell and Stern's outlook on life and how they kind of look at things. But some of the horror stories some of the other interpreters had experienced really kind of made you pause, because it's like more than one time, this one interpreter mentioned more than one group where the teacher just checks out. You could see her in the background working in the kitchen or something. I'm thinking, whoa. So that's brought it on home, is that whenever the teacher gets on Zoom with me, I'm saying, I'm asking you to do these things for me, because there is not going to be any checking out. And I know some folks have had issues, some troubles with mostly with older kids, but how do you allow the space for them to be able to discuss without or to write down things without hurting someone else's feelings? I know this is going to be a big debate, a big research project for a lot of the social scientists. Is was virtual learning helpful for some kids? Why did it not work for other kids? Why did some? And then some folks are finding that some kids that are the quiet ones feel that they have more of an ability to speak out and to write down things in the chat. That they can't do that in the classroom. So it's sort of interesting. Has anybody else experienced that, where they either the kind of a runaway train, the Miro board or the Jamboard or the breakout groups kind of dissolved? Has anybody had any issues with that? That's another thing I learned with this, is that you have to be comfortable with the pregnant pauses. That being quiet is not a bad thing. Let people think.
I'll say that I found that breakout rooms are amazing and I love them because oftentimes in a group, even of like this isn't a huge size group, but even in this size, it's too big for people to really want to talk. But if you break them up into groups of 10 or less in those breakout rooms, they're forced to talk, and it's a bit more of a safe space.
And especially if you kind of make it clear that when we come back, together as a big group, you have the option. And again, we learned that in CIG, give people the option of saying, I'd rather not do that. I do not want to, quack like a duck. Don't ask me to do that. So yeah.
I have a question for those that have been using those breakout rooms for school groups. Do you have an adult that goes in those rooms to kind of monitor, or you just kind of pop in and check? How do y'all do that?
We're not using them with our student groups, but in our teacher professional development, we've done it both ways. Sometimes they're sent to a breakout room with a task or a question. Sometimes they're there with a facilitator. So like earlier this year, we did a teacher PD on race. And we felt like you really needed someone to help kind of guide and shepherd that conversation. So there was a person in each breakout room for that. But we haven't done them with students.
And I think that a lot of that, I always struggle with control. I feel more comfortable when I'm in control. And sometimes you have to kind of, the wabi-sabi has to take over. Like, let's have a chance to do that. And I don't know, if I understand correctly, the level of Zoom that you have will determine how well you can break out and whether you can get back in and, move between and that kind of business, which again is somewhat of an issue because I know the price points can vary pretty big. Had a nice comment from Jenny. I like this, silently count to 7. Boy, howdy, if 7, 8's a long time. But sometimes you have to let people kind of think. Any other thoughts? Any other questions? You have like 12 minutes to be able to do something else before the rest of the world crashes back in on you.
Well, I'm going to take up a little bit of that time to point out that, hey, 2022, we hope to not be on the other side of computer screens from one another. So we are looking for individuals who are interested in helping us put on the 2022. And you can contact any of us that if you're interested in that. I'm thinking about having it here in Myrtle Beach simply because I work at a Hilton hotel that has 35,000 square feet of meeting space and 452 hotel rooms. And I have 2 state parks within 45 minutes. If you are interested in coming to Myrtle Beach, I ain't doing this by myself, y'all. So gonna need some help. Also, if you need recertification credits or proof of attendance, you can email christine.lawson@mecknc.gov. It's in your chat, and she will give that to you. I have gotten your name off of the attendance list. So if you need that, you can email her and I will verify with her your attendance. Of course, if you're not in the session, you're not going to hear that. So, whatever. But we are looking for help to get the region up and moving again. If you want to be a state rep, we have states that need a representative just to sort of prod along the lambs. We need to be reaching out to our people because it has been a rough year. The last 12 months has been crazy, unprecedented in so many different ways, whether your site got shut down or whether your site got overrun because everything else was shut down. With friends and family having the virus, being concerned about getting the virus and giving it to friends and family because we work with the public, all of that sort of thing. We're hoping to really reconnect, and our state reps can help us do that. And if you're not really ready for that yet, then we can also look at the different committees that we have. I run the Awards and Scholarships Committee. If you're looking for a low commitment, I need 10 hours of your time per year, folks, 10 hours per year. And so I'm going to put my contact down in here as well before the meeting is over, so you can contact me about the Awards and Scholarships Committee. If you're looking to have an office, we are potentially looking for a deputy director. There are all sorts of ways to get involved, and the majority of them don't require your physical presence, especially not anymore, since everything can be done this way. So I'm glad that everybody enjoyed the presentation. Thank you, Rhana, so much for being here and relaying all of this great information to us so that we can take it and utilize it at our own sites. And so if anybody else has any last comments, I am going to mute myself so I can type and it doesn't sound like I'm punching you in the face. And anybody else just went to pop on and say hi, and then Kate can wrap up for us.
Yeah. And is this going to be a filmed, recorded? Jan was mentioning that her speakers were messing up. So can she watch this later?
Yes. So this has been a recorded session. I will send it to the wonderful ladies who are running our YouTube channel. So we have a new YouTube channel, so watch out for that. And yep, you should have full access to the whole session then on YouTube.
Cool. And I'll just throw out to the crowd that I'll type my email in there as well. The idea that if anybody wants to find out, it's like, stay tuned for the rest of the story. Let me know, because again, like I said, we will be, I can't talk and type at the same time. Aquarium.com. We'll be doing, be doing surveys with the kids. We've already done a number of lessons with my 5th graders, and seeing if there's any shift in the needle on some of my 12 outcomes I was working toward. And the story continues. But I hope you will keep on learning, because, oh my gosh, got to keep on learning. Well, thank you very much, everybody. And you now have 8 minutes of your own.
Well, thank you, Rhana. And I just want to remind everybody, we don't have another session today, but tomorrow at 12:30 is the next session. So I hope you will be able to join in. And I know I've learned a lot in the 2 that I've watched this week. So I hope you guys will continue to join in, or at least watch some of the recorded ones for the ones you can't join. But thank you again. And I hope to see you all again soon.
All right. Laters.
I have a dumb question.
Oh, go ahead.
No,
go ahead.
I'm a new NAI member in CIG, so it's kind of like whatever. But I was wondering, can I count if, let's say, I watch it because my work week starts tomorrow for the next several days. Can I count like the session that I watch online on YouTube as recertification credit, or does it have to be live?
I don't know. I'll find out.
Okay. Yeah.
I'll send an email. Emily Jacobs is the training coordinator for national. So I'll reach out to Emily and ask her if we can count that or not.
Okay.
All right.
Great.
Thanks for getting your last minute question in. That's great.
Sorry about that. Yeah.
No worries. No worries.
Okay. That was excellent. And that was very excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right. I'll see you all later.
Yeah. Bye now.
Christy says, yes, you can count it.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
I mean, I don't care. Count whatever you want.
Great. I got 40 hours I need to get
they're
in.
Not, they're not likely to challenge you, because usually you just fill out a thing and said, I did this, this, and this. And they're like, okay, yeah, sure, whatever.
Yeah.
It's more of an honor system, like reporting kind of thing, than it is like checking on your. Most people do professional development because they want to, not because they want certification credits. Right? I mean, in this field anyway, because they're fun.
Yeah, I'm doing it for both. I just, I'm trying to dot my T's and Q's, because I'm a certified teacher, I'm a certified yoga teacher, a wilderness first responder, and that's
a lot of continuing education.
Years. And if you go to one national conference, that covers your 40 hours.
Excellent. Thanks, Jessica.
Yep.
Yep.
All right, everybody. I'm going to close the meeting.
See you tomorrow.
Take care.
Bye.
Thanks.